On a slick pitch under the lights at the Wanderers grounds, in the cold and the wind and the rain, moments from elimination on multiple occasions, York United had their fairy tale moment in the first match of the 2025 CPL Playoffs, more than 3 hours after kickoff on penalties. Wednesday night's fourth versus fifth knockout match was supposed to be the appetizer for this postseason, guys, but it is hard to imagine it gets much better than this. CPL Newsroom presented by Volkswagen. Charlie O'Connor Clark, joined by Mitch Tierney, and a man who was on the scene for it all, Josh Healy. Welcome to the show this week. This one was incredible. This game, guys, truly had it all between York United and Halifax Wanderers, to the extent that I don't know how we're going to cover everything in about 15 minutes of this show here. Not one, but two last-ditch equalizers for York United. Extra time, a stop-start lightning delay. It had likely heroes. It had unlikely heroes. It ended in a roller coaster of a penalty shootout. If you didn't see it, do not go watch the highlights. Go watch the whole game if you can, because you won't want to miss a single minute of what happened in it. Josh, this was a truly, truly outrageous episode of knockout football. Can you, as someone who was on the ground, try to bring us there and put into words what exactly it was like experiencing this entire madness at the Wanderers grounds?
Well, you just summed it up right there, Charlie. As I wrote post-match, it was mad, it was magic, and it had a little bit of everything for football fans across the country, whether you were neutral, whether you're supporting York, whether you're supporting Halifax. This was the Canadian Premier League at its absolute best, and it didn't fail to entertain from the moment that the first whistle went until Jeremy Gagnon-Lapierre, who had seemed the hero only mere minutes before, ended up missing his penalty. It is, from my perspective, the maddest and possibly the best football match that I've ever had the privilege to cover.
Yeah, I don't think that would be an understatement for really any of us, because this was remarkable. And we're getting kind of good at this playoff drama thing in the CPL. We've got 3 extra time games in the league's history now, and all 3 of them have seen both teams score in extra time, which is really ridiculously rare, honestly. But we're going to get to Halifax and the Wanderers' disappointment and heartbreak a little bit after, because we do have to talk about that and put a bow on their season, and how close it was to being a much more positively memorable moment. But let's start with York United, because this is a club who finished 5th this year, had chances to finish higher, really had 4th place in their hands a couple of weeks before the end of the season. But this is a club that really, really has impressed me still in the way that it's evolved over this year. You go back to the first 7 games of the season, they dropped 14 points from winning positions. Since then, they dropped 2, right? And this game kind of encapsulated just how much more character and maturity this team has adopted. We've said on this show several weeks ago that York felt like a team that were built to play ugly playoff games. They'll drag teams down into that. And you go back to the start of this game, the kickoff. Stefan Yates does the PSG thing where he puts it straight into touch, and York set the tone with how they want to be pressing and down the Wanderers' throats immediately. I think seconds after that throw in, Kembo Kibato absolutely cleans out Ryan Telfer with that kind of statement tackle to open the game. And this was a physical game from York. They had like 6 yellow cards and 3 of them in the first 40 minutes. Not all of them super necessarily completely deserved yellow cards, but still. Mitchell, let's talk about York and how they got this done kind of off the mat twice with just, both times a couple of minutes to go. And it's their 2 strikers who hadn't played together all year, play 120 minutes, Altobelli and Hundal, together in this game, and they both score. What can you say about York United right now?
York United just feel unbreakable, don't they? Like the way this match happens, the way that for what was it, 86 minutes, Halifax, they get the first goal. They look likely to get a second with the way they were on the counterattack and the way they fired, I think, 26 shot attempts, 13 on target at Diego Arteaga throughout the game. But in the key moments of the match, they find a way to equalize. They find a way to get it to extra time. Then obviously there's the delay and Halifax come out and score again. You think surely this is curtains for them. And then they get their own set piece. They equalize. And even in penalties as well, Yates missing his opportunity. And then no bother. They go up, they score the next two, and all of a sudden it's them in the lead again, and them off to the semifinal qualifier. So, I mean, there's just so many moments in this game where York could have broken. Even you talk about early on, like the way the match was going, the amount of fouls they had against them, and I thought it was interesting when Christian Jack was talking to Mauro Stacchio at halftime. He said, "Listen, like you guys have conceded 13 fouls. That's like up there with the most that a CPL team's ever had in a first half of a game." And Mauro kind of brushed it off. He easily could have gone at the refs or been frustrated at that point. And he's like, "No, this is the way we play. This is always going to be a byproduct of that." And that's been the case all season. Like they're a team that is willing to get ugly. They're willing to get a little dirty at times when they need to. And it plays to their advantage in games like this where things do get so emotional and so incredibly tight, and they're up for it. And they live in that kind of zone where it doesn't get them off their game, and they don't cross the line in those key moments. So I thought that this was just a brilliant performance from them in terms of how they managed the entire 3.5 hours of this game. And that's the reason that obviously that they're the one moving on.
Yeah, it's a funny one because I think that is the right way to say it, that York managed this game better. I think a lot of the game, you probably wouldn't necessarily say that they played better than Halifax. The Wanderers had far more chances, especially in the 90 minutes. They looked the more comfortable team. And again, until the 86th minute, when Julian Altobelli ties the game, the Wanderers look like they are about to see out a tight, gritty 1-0 win against a difficult team to play against in the playoffs. And this goes a very different way. But I do think that a lot of credit is due to Mauro Stacchio in particular, in terms of the way he prepared his side for this game, knowing that the Wanderers are very good with the ball, have so much talent in midfield with Caligari and Johnston. He wanted to disrupt them. He wanted to prevent them from getting in a rhythm, with kind of that physicality and occasional fouling and things like that. You kind of throw them off their game and get under their skin a bit. And then the changes that York made were very, very impactful, right? He doesn't wait around. 55th minute, Eustachio brings on Shola Gimo and Massimo Ferrin. They'd been pretty narrow up to that point with kind of Hundal and Altobelli and Reed in their attack. And this all of a sudden gives them a bunch of width. Gimo has to come in and play as a wingback, but he does exceptionally well. I think he assisted the first goal and then played in the free kick to create the second goal for York. And then a little bit later in that first half, he brings on Gabby Bitar for Elijah Atakubi. He puts Max Ferrari at right center back, which he's never done, I think, in his whole career. And you get Bitar up into your attack, and he's creative as well. He's causing problems. So I really think that Eustachio kind of made a big difference and helped York kind of get over the line when it was very difficult. Speaking of which, though, the Halifax Wanderers, their season comes to a close here. We're going to talk about them before we get back to York and that that next playoff game. We gotta kind of tie a bow on the Wanderers here, because this is genuinely heartbreaking for that club, for the players. So close to that first home playoff win. Josh, you've been covering this team for years, and you know how much it meant to the players, to the city, to the community to have this game in Halifax and to be so close. I guess I'll leave it open here, but kind of what went wrong for them in this game?
Yeah, you summed it up so well, Charlie. This was really meant to be, or it felt like it, at least for 86 minutes, that this was going to be the coming of age story for Halifax. That they were finally going to kind of make good on their ambitions and push to that next level as a club that can see out those big matches. And unfortunately for them, that's not the case. I mean, I think there are a few things that you could maybe point to, given the context that this is one of the strangest matches that both, Mauro Stacchio and Patrice Geyser said they've ever been a part of. There's no playbook how to keep your side motivated after 2 lightning shortages. However, I think probably in I think it was the 77th minute, Halifax is arguably in control of the match, and Sean Rea, who had been electric on the night. I mean, York United were, full on body tackling him.
He was the best player on the pitch.
He was the best player on the pitch. They were doing anything they could not to let him progress the ball. And I don't think Geyser actually addressed it last night, but he's pulled in the 77th minute, and they go to a more defensive formation with Andre Rampersad. You could argue in one regard that many a coach, not only in the CPL but in all of world football, with 13 minutes left in a pivotal match in the history of your club, you're going to sit in a low block and try and squeeze it out and employ time wasting and the dark arts. But given Ray's form and how impactful he had been, you can't help but wonder, maybe Halifax would have had the ball for that remaining 13 minutes, and we would be talking, have a very different story coming out of this match. The other thing as well is Estacchio spoke about this pre-match, but his side had so much composure, and nothing says composure like the penalties. Some you could almost argue that two of Lorenzo Caligari's most unfortunate moments in a Wanderers shirt happened in pretty quick succession last night, where he gets knocked down for the tying goal, and then he steps up and misses his penalty as well, which puts them on the back foot for the entirety of it. Penalties are such a mental game, and when you're playing catch up, it can be really, really difficult. So I don't think necessarily that it was a bad performance. If anything, I thought the Wanderers did a lot of really good things. Arguably, it should have been their match to win, but that's not how playoff football works. There was a touch of magic last night, and it's York United who ended up coming out with it.
Yeah, I mean, as I said, they were the better team for certainly most of the 90 minutes that were played. And realistically, if you score in the 114th minute of extra time, you usually win the game. I don't know what happened. I do think that can be a case of maybe York not thinking the game was as over as the Wanderers did in that situation. And we've seen that before. We've seen that in a CPL final before, where a team scores and the team that concedes is far more up for the next few minutes of the game, and they get right back into it and punch right back. But this was so close to being a very, very magical story for Halifax. Thiago Coimbra scores. He'd been out of the lineup for 5 games. He'd just getting back to fitness. I don't think he's even fully healthy now. He played 120 minutes in this game. He attempted 2 bicycle kicks. It was about to be just an incredible story for him. Jeremy Gagnon-Laparé, I mean, he ends up being, I guess, one of the scapegoats of this game because of missing the penalty. But he's a guy who's played 70 minutes this year, and he has never had a CPL season where he played fewer than 1,200. And he comes into this game late, I believe in extra time, and he scores. He nearly scored an even better one before that, by the way. He put one right under the bar that Urtiaga palmed over. But he does score that goal to put them ahead in extra time. And again, it's a moment that is ultimately kind of going to be forgotten because they lost the game. So it is a really, really tough one to swallow, I think, if you're the Halifax Wanderers.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I've of course post-match, speaking to other journalists, talking to people around the pitch or whatever, and everyone kind of came away with the same feeling. It was a match unlike anyone had ever attended here in Nova Scotia, just in terms of not only the drama and the emotion, but the length that it went as well, right? Even when, the fans were removed from the grandstands, you could still hear people chanting behind. And, through 1 and 2 delays, they came out, the flags were still there. There was a really surreal moment, actually, where the players came out to warm up again, and the stadium was empty. Like it was, again, unlike anything I've ever witnessed covering the Canadian Premier League. And so there are a lot of amazing things to remember about this match. But as you said, at the end of the day, the most important thing, and the thing that people will remember, is Mauro Stacchio's side was hungry. As he said last night, his side is starving to prove that they belong with the best in the league, and you've got to give it to them. Like that performance was one for the ages. This York United side has learned from their last couple playoff exits.
Yeah, absolutely. Just side note, there was a shot on the broadcast last night of kind of just before they kicked back off in extra time, of fans kind of running from the street back into the stadium. I don't know how word got around quickly enough or how everybody found out that they were going to be allowed back in, but it was a truly, truly just awesome visual to seeing kind of people so excited to get back in. But yes, you're right. York United starving. as Mario Eustachio said, and we will see them on Sunday night in Calgary against Cavalry FC, semifinal qualifier, winner of which is just one more game away from getting to the CPL final. And that one's going to be on OneSoccer and TSN, as are all 2025 Canadian Premier League playoff matches.